Hello, everyone. This is your host, Susan Rosen. And my guest today is Anna Edmonds. And Anna has a really interesting point of view on life and what so many of us have either been through or will be going through. And I'm going to have Anna introduce herself and tell us about what she's doing.
Okay, well,
Welcome,
first of
Anna.
all, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm happy to tell people what I'm doing in life. My background is I am a journalist, but I never went down the news path for what I think are obvious reasons. Nobody wants to be in the news these days, be reporting it or anything else.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
I've been in magazines for many years, either
Uh-huh.
editing or writing for magazines or
Oh,
editing my own. And then I started two of my own magazines. So the one I'm here to talk about today is called Reverse. It also has a podcast to go with it. So
oh,
Reverse
good.
Magazine, yeah, and we can talk about that too.
Mhm.
Reverse Magazine is for adult children who are taking care of their elderly parents. Huge demographic. And that came out of the fact that I was my mother's caregiver for 3 years. And caregiving can come in many different ways. They might live with you, they might live far away, they could be in a senior living community. But if I tell people, if you're calling your mom once a week just to kind of put ears on her and take her temperature, you're already on the path to caring for your parents. That's how it starts, as they get older. But very quickly, and then you can ask whatever questions you want. What I
Hmm,
found was as a
please.
caregiver, I was very frustrated. I knew I needed help. I didn't know what kind of help needed. I didn't know what resources were out there. And caregiving is so time consuming emotionally, physically, spiritually, every which way that I didn't know where to go. I knew Googling, Google's only going to tell me what Google wants me to know. And I couldn't find anything that was helpful to me. So, advanced 3 years later, after she passed, I have this magazine that I'm publishing that's different from this. And I realized, wait a minute, I'm a journalist. I can make a magazine for caregivers. I'm
Yeah.
not a professional caregiver, but as a journalist, I know where to go to find these experts, whether it's doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, it doesn't matter, and bring them in and help people be better caregivers and not
Mhm.
go through what I went through helplessly looking for I didn't know what.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm doing.
Okay, well, that's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. So shortly after I put out the
yeah.
magazine, a friend came along and said, "You need to do a podcast about this." And that's kind of a long story too. But the podcast is Navigating in Reverse, which is the tagline to the magazine. And we drop
Ah,
episodes every other week, and I
uh-huh.
bring on experts, these doctors, lawyers, insurance, Medicare specialists,
Yeah,
whatever it is. And we talk every other week about things that caregivers need to know, and
yeah.
very proud of it. I've heard great things about the podcast. The magazine is no longer a print magazine.
Um,
The cost of
don't need that
paper,
anymore. Yeah.
yeah, it went up. The cost of paper went up 80% after COVID. I'm like, I cannot do this. So
Yeah.
it's a digital magazine. We post the articles on social media. So you
Uh-huh.
can look for Reverse Magazine on Facebook and LinkedIn and around different places.
Oh, excellent.
And then there's the podcast. So all the content is free. We are supported
Oh,
through advertising and sponsors.
okay. That
Or
makes
you
sense.
can have a branded, if you want to be on, like for example, if you wanted to be on my podcast and you don't want a commercial, but you want to talk about yourself, you can pay me and I will put you on my podcast and you can do whatever. If you don't
Yeah.
pay me, I'm going to ask you whatever I want to ask you. So, I got to make money somehow. But mostly we just bring people in and they contribute content to the magazine or they pay to
Hmm.
advertise. That's how we support it.
Okay. No, that makes sense. That makes
Mhm.
sense. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So how long then have you been, with the magazine first, I assume, and then the
Right, the
is what you were
podcast,
saying,
the
right?
podcast
Podcast.
came shortly later.
Newer. Yeah.
We've actually only been doing the magazine for a little over a year.
Oh,
Hasn't
wow.
been-
Okay.
it took a long time once the idea came about. You don't just put a magazine together. You don't have a great graphic designer, but you need to come up with a template and colors and branding and then pull
Yeah.
everybody together. There's a lot involved there. So it took a while to pull that together and then get a trademark for the reverse.
Ah,
It was a
right.
it was a genius name for the magazine because of the role reversal that takes place when you're
Absolutely.
caring for a parent. I mean, you end up making a lot of their decisions for them. So I've gotten a lot of compliments on the name of the magazine.
Oh, yeah.
So it's actually, navigating in reverse, which is exactly
Uh-huh.
what you're doing. It's like raising a child. And that's
Yeah.
it's very hard to come to terms with parenting your parent. It's extremely difficult to do that. I found it very difficult to do.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that's it in a nutshell. That's what I'm doing.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah. No, I think that's great. So do you get a lot of feedback from people? Maybe asking questions or, or giving their experience or
I hear a lot of caregiver stories wherever I go because this
Mhm.
is a huge demographic.
Yeah.
The baby boom generation, the youngest of them, which is basically you and me, are in
Mhm.
their early 60s, the very
Mhm.
last of them.
Late 60, but yeah.
Right, but there's younger ones than you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So the baby boomers are either already in care, and you have to remember this is the largest generation in American history. So
Right.
a portion of them are already in care, getting ready to need care, or
Mhm.
caring. I know a lot of people in their 70s, even yes, 60s, 70s, and maybe pushing 80, taking care of 90 and 100-year-old parents.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what,
That's really
because we
scary,
live
huh?
longer, yes, we're
Yeah.
healthier, and there's more of us. So this is a huge
Yeah.
demographic, huge. So your podcast listeners, I knew that these women over 50, I guarantee, I don't know how many people are going to be listening to this, but most of them know exactly what I'm talking about. They're heading straight for it if they're not already there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, exactly. Exactly. Or if they haven't already gone through it like I did.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's important to know that the way I approach everything is
Mhm.
prophylactically. My goal is to help people who are already caregiving or know that they're heading in that direction
Right.
to avoid a lot of the mistakes that I or other caregivers have made because they
Yeah.
didn't have the information that I'm trying to push out there.
Right.
Um, I have siblings, none of them lived close by, so I was boots on the ground, but we made mistakes.
Mhm.
And the tragic thing is when you make a mistake, like maybe move your mom from one assisted living facility to another or move them from out of state, there's a lot of mistakes you can make, getting downsizing and getting rid of some of their things, a lot of
Oh my
mistakes.
God. Oh
Yeah.
my God. Yeah. Yeah.
Then in hindsight, you realize, oh my gosh, I made a mistake, but it's too expensive or too
Yes.
mentally and emotionally upsetting to the senior or you
Yeah.
to fix it. And so you're stuck going down this path that you can't correct, or to
Mhm.
correct it
Mhm.
would just be traumatizing to everybody involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm trying to help people avoid a lot of those mistakes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Excuse me. Um, I know the biggest thing that happened when I brought my mom up to where I am is that she would not come up to look at the place. Oh, you know what I like. Oh, you know what I like.
Right.
She
Yes.
got there and I think she was like, pardon my language, kill me now kind of,
Right. Right.
right? Because it was much smaller. It was, she had brought all of her big furniture. I mean, it was just, but she
Okay.
wouldn't come up. She would not come up.
So
No,
guess
you know what I like. You know
right.
what I like, right?
We
Yeah.
kind of went through that too. And my mom had dementia, so she was not really part of the decision. We had to do that. We thought we knew what she liked. I have since found out, because of what I do, there are actually companies who are called senior living locators. You know, there's different companies. They
Ah,
act like
yeah.
real estate agents.
Uh-huh.
They know all the senior living communities in your area. You don't
Ah,
pay them to do this. You say, this
wow.
is my budget. This is what I need. This is the size that I need because
Uh-huh.
this is the furniture she's bringing.
Yeah.
This is the level. They're going to sit down and ask you, what kind of care does she need? Does she have dementia? Can she walk? Can she get, these different levels? And then they narrow it down to the things that fit your checklist. And they
Mm-hmm.
say, come on, we're going to go look at them. And you can see, even if your mother hadn't come, you would have seen, because this woman would have asked you really important questions that you didn't
Mm,
know to ask.
yeah.
That business of downsizing, when people move from their home to an adult, to a senior community, whether it's assisted living, skilled living, independent living, these people will draw a floor map of your new living space
Mm,
with the square
mm.
footage and say, you can't take that king size bed. Or if you do, that's the only piece of furniture you can. They help you fit all that in there. And then there's
Ah.
senior move managers who are specially trained to deal with seniors who have to downsize, have to get rid of some of this stuff. I've interviewed them on my podcast over and over and over again. They are lifesavers. They are trained how to
Oh,
talk to these
yeah.
people. One example is, these people have, let's say, a collection of teacups. They have
Yeah. Yeah.
100 teacups. Well, you can't take that with you. There's nowhere to put that in your little 2-room apartment that you're going to have. So that the person I was interviewing told me, let's take a picture of your teacups. Well, as they're displayed right now, and you can pick out 3 of them to take with you, but you'll always have this picture to hand down to your family. I'm like, that's genius. So they're
Yeah.
trained how to do things like that so that you don't end up like you did with all this furniture that she
Oh,
wants to
God.
move. And then in a panic, you're getting rid of this stuff, and it's their stuff. It's important to them.
Yeah.
Holds
Yeah.
memory.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yes. It
It's
was not
traumatizing.
fun. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And I wish that we'd had it, 10 years ago or actually more. So yeah, it was probably about 14, 15 years ago that she moved up.
Right. Well, the
Yeah.
world is slowly catching on that there's this huge demographic of people that are
Yes.
caregiving and they need help because at that age we're working.
Oh,
I'm working
smart.
full time, we
Yeah.
need people to help us do these things. And the in-home care agencies where you can call up and have somebody come in and make lunch for your mom 3 times a week or take her
Yeah.
to so you just keep
Yeah.
they, they're everywhere. I mean,
Oh my
there's
God. Yeah.
millions of them around now. I
Yep.
mean, that was
Yep.
something I didn't even know existed until I started caring for my mom. But then again, not everybody can afford it. It's very
Yeah.
expensive. Everything senior related is very expensive, and people don't realize that until they get there and they haven't planned. So we
Mm-hmm.
talk a lot about planning ahead
Mm-hmm.
financially, not just for your parents' care, talk to your parents before they get to that stage. What are their plans? Do they have long-term care insurance? Do they have money set aside? Do they have a cancer policy? Blah, 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 blah. And while you're doing that, are you thinking of yourself? Because as you're seeing what your parents are going through, you should be looking at your own life in those
Thank
circumstances
you. Yes.
and be making a will. Nobody wants to talk about making a will or a power of
Yep.
attorney or what are those, the living will.
Living will. Yep. Right. Right.
Nobody wants to talk about those things, but you have to, or you leave a mess for the people you leave behind. And
Yeah.
families have been
Yeah.
ruined because, nobody knows if mom wanted buried or cremated. She didn't leave a will. What a
Yeah.
mess. There's
Yeah.
5 kids and we all want this stuff and there's no
Yeah.
will.
Well, and in addition to that, you don't know you don't know things about their house if they own a house, if they owe on the house, right? Do they have other yeah, I mean, there's all these other things that are the day-to-day kinds of shit that,
Yes.
you
And our
know
parents are of that generation that didn't discuss those things with their kids.
Oh
My
no.
dad never in his life would expose to me how much money he made. I could be 75 years old and he could be 90, and he's never going to tell me about how much money he has or let me help him, take care of his
Right.
finances. My mother was relieved when he died. She took my sister, here, you do it. I don't want to deal with this stuff, because he had done it all the time.
Yeah.
So yes,
Yeah.
you have these children of these Depression era people who are dying, and we don't know what's going on. We don't know if they still owe on their house. We don't know if they have veterans benefits. We don't know what policies they have. How do we get to their safety deposit box? You can't just walk into the bank manager herself told me that. She goes, every week, I can't tell you how many people come in here and say, I need to get into my mother's account. Well, you're not gonna, because you don't have power.
You're right. You're talking to the wrong person.
Yeah, but
Talk
she's
to your
dead.
mother.
She's like, I can't get her permission. She's dead. I'm like, well, you're in even bigger trouble. You're gonna have to wait till you get through probate. You should have taken care of that before she died. It's a mess.
Oh my God, yes. Even if you have access to it, and I had access to everything,
Yes.
it's still a mess.
Yeah,
It's
I
still
mean,
a mess.
anytime somebody dies, there's stuff to do.
Oh God.
But you shouldn't have to, in the immediate wake of a death, be dealing with those you should be able to grieve for a little while and just have things fall into place, because there is a will, that you do know what they want as far as a funeral, that you
Oh
do.
yeah.
Those things
No,
should,
exactly.
but people don't want to talk about it. It's like,
Yeah.
if I don't talk about it, it's not going to happen. Well, I hate to tell you, but we're all going there. So you better talk about it.
Yeah. Oh no, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And everybody's different,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like one person, they'll share everything, right? But then there's always this one little bit. Oh, well, didn't I tell you about that kind of thing? Right. And then there's the others who are like, oh yeah, please take care of it. Just
Right.
I don't want to deal with it anymore.
So there's this great little planner on the market. You'd have to go to either my social media or listen to the podcast. I think we talk about it on the podcast. I know that we did an article about it, but it's this little planner called I'm Dead, So Now What? I think that's the title of it. So it's a really catchy title, and you can get it in any Walmart. And it's where you sit down and you literally write, it tells you what needs to be done, and you can give it to your kids or whoever your next of kin, so they know, what hymns do you want sung at your funeral? Who would you like to give your eulogy? Would you rather have a Buddhist monk there? Or this
I like that.
Yeah, all of it. There's just, it goes into so much detail about things, the legal issues. It's not a living will thing, but it's that Bible for the people you leave behind. So there's no fighting. And I encourage everybody to go get a copy of it. I think it's called I'm Dead, So Now What? Or something. Yeah. It's very cute. But I posted about it on social media, so you can find it.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Yeah. No, which reminds me, we need to get our wills updated.
Okay. Yeah.
They can get out of whatever.
Yes, you need to have those examined every couple of years, or anytime there's a life change. If your husband dies or something, or you move, you've got to update your will. Yeah.
Oh no, absolutely. In fact, I think our lawyer died. It's the bigger issue.
There you go.
We have to
you better find out where it is.
Yeah. I mean, we have copies of it, but
I was
who do we
thinking
go to now? Right?
Yeah, I can't find the copy of my will. I know I have it around here somewhere, and I need to find it because mine also needs updated. I've got grandkids now. My kids are married. Just so many changes taken. And now there's a business. This magazine started.
That's even more important.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's going to have to deal with that and shut it down or take it over. All those things people don't think about. That's called estate planning, and nobody wants to do estate planning. So I actually did a podcast interview with an attorney. I brought her on. She does estate planning, and I told her, I said, I know people don't want to talk about what you're here to talk about and being
Mhm.
prepared legally for all this stuff. So, for the most part, I want you to tell my listeners a bunch of horror stories about things that have actually you've had to go through with your clients because they didn't do these things. It's a really fun,
Yes.
I mean, it's good to hear these things about
Mhm.
these families that literally, she knows lawyers who don't have wills. They've died
Yeah.
without a, I'm like, what? That's like the
Too
shoemaker's
much
children
trouble.
with no
Yeah.
shoes. It's even worse. So yeah, she has a bunch of horror stories that she'll tell
Uh-huh.
you about people that haven't done these things, and
Yeah.
it tears families apart. And you don't
Oh,
recover.
yeah.
Very rarely do these families recover from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, and like I say, we need to get back. We did the whole thing, but
Right.
now it's totally out of date.
Sure. Yeah, I did mine after my divorce, and my kids were quite a bit younger. I mean, that was
Yeah.
15 years ago. A lot's
Yeah.
changed in 15 years.
That's
So
right. That's
it's
right.
important.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
really, in the big scheme of things, getting a will done is not that expensive. I don't know how much it is now. I remember paying $600 at the time. I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
thought this was going to be super expensive. Mine's easy. It's not like I have lots of houses and investment
Yeah.
stuff like that,
Yeah.
but it's relatively cheap to pull that off. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
but do not go to what's that legal, is it Legal Zoom?
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
I'm going to tell you right now, my sister is an elder law attorney. Do not go to that website and make your will or anything else because it's not going to hold up in court. So that I've had several attorneys tell me that. So
Okay. Yeah. No, we wouldn't have done that anyways, but thank you for my audience.
yes,
Yes, that's a big one. And don't use it for anything else either.
no, for lots of things. I mean, they do all kinds of legal
Oh, they
things.
do everything. They do everything, and it's all, bad news. Stay away.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Huh. But they must be making a lot of money because they're still around. But we
Well,
won't go
people
down
are
there.
lazy and they don't
Yes.
know to look into it or take advice like I'm giving. I'm sure a lot of people have gotten away using those documents, but
Mhm.
for the most part, I would not recommend doing anything online without speaking to an actual attorney.
Period. Yes, exactly.
And go to the right
Exactly.
kind of attorney. Don't just go,
Yeah.
like, for example, when I got divorced, I went to a family law attorney and did very well. My
Mhm.
ex met an attorney at the gym who happened to be an elder law attorney.
Okay.
He got raped by me and his attorney. It's just like, and it's so resentful to this day. What are you doing using an elder law attorney because he's your buddy from the gym doing your divorce? It's just like, are you kidding? So I laughed all the way to the bank. Sorry, I don't feel sorry for you, bud. You know,
Oh, yeah, exactly. You set yourself up for that one, huh?
the ironic thing is he, one of the reasons he married me is because I'm so smart. I'm like, well, you lost that when you walked out, and it cost you in legal fees.
Uh-huh. And exactly. Exactly. Some things don't change just because you don't like the person
That's
anymore.
right. That we're going off into. I have a million stories like that, but that's for a whole different podcast.
Ah, exactly. Yes, that's true. That's true. That's funny. Yeah, well, it's the same thing though. I mean, it's the same. It applies to all legal
Yes.
things.
Yes, of course. Of course.
And that's people are always like, "Oh, well, this is different." It's like, "No, it's not.
Right.
No, it's
It
not.
is
You
what it
still need to
is.
get somebody who knows what the hell they're doing."
Yes, that's why there are professions. You
Thank
you
you.
go to
That's
somebody
why
who knows what they're doing.
and that's why you pay a little bit more maybe as well if you can.
Yes. I tell people that all the time. It's like you
Yeah.
can't for Mark, like I have a graphic designer I work with, and she also makes websites. And she has this client who hired her to make her a fairly simple website, and she did and got paid for it. But the gal that hired her went in and started making all these changes and doesn't really know what she's doing. And there's so much to making a website these days,
Oh
as
my God.
all this
Yes,
other stuff.
yes, yes, yes.
And this woman is so angry because, her SEO dropped. And, for your listeners who don't know what SEO, it's your rankings in the Google listings when you Google something. And when my graphic designer was telling me this story, I'm like, I don't understand why she's complaining. She hired you to do something that you've been doing for 20 years and do very well. She's a photographer and hired you to build this website for her. You wouldn't take her pictures and then try and improve on those. She's a professional. And I was like, I just don't understand these people that hire someone and then criticize everything they do.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Human
But
nature,
yes, yes. But that's
unfortunately.
again off topic. But
Yeah, yeah. No, well, actually, it's kind of on topic because that's what ends up happening when you start dealing with your siblings and
yes.
any other people that might be have a a thing in the pool.
Well, that's something that I learned too, way too late, that we're 5 kids, we don't all get along. We don't hate each other, and there's nobody, that part, but we're just very different and we live in different parts
You're
of the
lucky. Yeah.
And nobody ever, even though I have an elder law attorney sister, none of us sat down and talked about what does mom and dad getting older look like. Well, now the wills and everything we're all taken care of. But I tell people, as you see your parents beginning to get into that stage where you think they're going to need some level of care by you or a professional, whatever, you need to grab all the siblings, even aunts and uncles, if they're going to be part of this, and have the conversation and ask, what is each person willing to bring to the table to help with what we're doing? It could be money, it could be time, it could be anything. Even if somebody raises their hand and says, I'm not doing anything, I'm out of this. That's information. Then you can do something with that. So
Yeah.
just get everybody and find out what everybody is willing to do or not do, and then
Right.
make a plan. And then that plan has to stay flexible all the time. We didn't do that. And I suffered for a year. My mother was living with me at first, and my brother had power of attorney. He lives an
Oh
hour
my
away from
God.
me. So he paid all the bills and did all that. He was very good at that. But I had brought this person into my house, and, she's eating my food and I'm missing time. Stuff is going on. Who's going to clean the house? I'm so busy.
Yeah.
And it took a long time for me I was already distraught by the time I approached him. I said, I need help. And he finally said, if you need to hire a housekeeper and somebody to do the yard, just say that and I'll send you the money. And I was like, oh, those are
okay.
conversations we need to have. I
Yeah.
never did learn to ask any of them, I need a break. Can somebody come down here for a weekend and let me just get out of here? I never asked anybody that. And I should be able to ask, but I didn't know that I needed respite. I knew I was tired. I knew I never got to go anywhere. But as I've gotten into this as a professional now with what I do, you have to ask for help. And even if people say no, that's information you can use. Okay, I'm not going to ask that person for that anymore, but maybe they'll do something else.
Exactly.
My brother in California, I'm in South Carolina. He's in California, and he's the baby of the family, but he wasn't hands-on. He even said, I says, I don't know how to help you guys, except help you make decisions and stuff, but I don't get to do anything. It didn't take me 2 seconds to say, you know what, Peter, I want you every month to order flowers and have them delivered to mom's room. That would make her so happy and bring her so much joy and brighten her room. And darned if he didn't do that. It was the littlest, smallest thing. That's a time I knew, like at the first of the month, there was going to be something there. I didn't have to walk in with a gift, a sandwich. I could just walk in empty-handed because Pete took care of it that day. And she was good for a week, It was lovely. Yeah. But I didn't ask for enough help. So if anybody's out there caregiving and because caregiver burnout and caregiver trauma are very real things. I don't have enough time on this podcast to talk about them. I didn't even know what caregiver trauma was until someone pointed out that I have it. And that's on the podcast too. If you go to my
Oh,
podcast and look for a caregiver's war story, I tell my story
ah,
like that.
uh-huh.
But caregiver burnout is very
Oh,
real. And
yeah.
I tell
Oh,
people
yeah.
the most
I had that.
important, yeah, the most important thing about caregiving is self-care. You cannot
Absolutely.
pour from an empty cup. If you're not taking care of yourself, you cannot care for someone else. And caregivers have a 63% higher risk of death than the person they are caring for because the stress level is
Wow.
so high. Yes,
Wow. That makes
often die.
perfect sense. Makes perfect sense.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
very real statistic.
I spent a lot of nights on her couch, not being able to sleep because it was so damn uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And having her come out and start, with this look on her face like she had just seen the ghost of whatever. And, so they're at me, they're trying to get me. It's like,
yeah, yeah.
okay, and then having to take her to the hospital and then having to go
The
to work.
hospital. Oh my
Who,
gosh.
who got
Yes,
sleep? I didn't get any sleep.
yes. Because
I'm still trying to recover from that.
yes, at the time when my mom was in assisted living, I would get a call in the middle of the day. We've taken your mom down to the hospital. She's having so and so issues. And I know that when they take her, they just dump her there. And she has dementia. And so I have to drop what I'm doing and get down there because if they take her into the ER and they ask her what's the matter with you, she didn't. I've heard her say it. The doctor will come and say, "Hi, Mrs. Geltman, how are you?" And she goes, "I'm fine." And I'm like, "You're not fine. You're in the emergency room." But it's a minimum 6-hour sit and wait in the ER. And then they might admit her, and that takes a couple hours too. I mean, if that's not a stressful situation and there's no decent food to eat, it's cold in there, you didn't
Oh
bring
my
anything
God,
with you
yes.
to read,
Oh, I
it's just like,
know. Oh,
right?
yes.
It's
Oh,
just,
yes. Brings
people
back
don't,
so many
you don't think
memories.
about these things. You
Yes.
just don't think. So toward the end, I remembered always to keep a change of clothes for my mom because
Mm.
once in a while she would wet herself. She had
Mm-hmm.
incontinence to
Oh,
some
yeah.
degree. So I had to keep that there. I had a bag for the hospital in case they admitted her right away. I had her brush and her toothbrush, pajama, whatever she needed, a whole bag for the hospital. I kept extra Depends in the car so that we would have those. And I kept reading material for myself. I always had a book in there
Yes.
that I
Yes.
could read or a crossword puzzle book or
Yes.
something.
Yeah.
But that was at the very end. It took me that long to figure these things out because nobody is doing what I'm doing for you right now.
Right.
Telling you, get these,
No.
have your
No.
emergency aids with you.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
That's
Yeah.
it's really rough. I was in the middle of getting ready to go into a job interview when I got the hospital call. I was in the lobby. The person was coming down to meet me. And I said to the receptionist, tell that person when they get down here, I had to go. My mother's going to the hospital and I'm out of here. And I never got another interview with that. I mean, that was over. I mean, that's a huge sacrifice on my part.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not the
Absolutely.
end of the world. I'm fine. But I mean, that's rough stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's a whole life becomes so totally different when you start doing that.
Yes. It's
And you don't
overwhelming.
even realize it. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
literally like living two lives. And I will tell you
Yeah.
that I gained so much weight, wasn't eating right. I mean, I've never had a weight problem, but those years that I was caring for my mom, you're on the run all the time. Um, she didn't like the food they were serving there, so I would stop by. And she
Oh
loves
God.
Reubens, she loves hot dogs.
Oh
So of course I'm
no.
gonna grab one for me too. And I'm always on
Yeah.
the run in between here and there. It was just a very unhealthy time for me. I didn't get to
Yeah.
exercise the way I wanted to.
Oh
That's
yeah.
all part of the self-care that we're talking about. And
That's
then
right.
the nights where you're laying awake wondering,
Yep.
there were times even before COVID. She died before COVID, luckily. but they would go into lockdown because there would maybe be a rotavirus going through the community that they,
Yeah.
and so they're stuck in their rooms literally 24/7 for 3 to 7 days, depending on what's going on over there. And she had dementia. She didn't understand that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was
Oh,
freaking out because I
how
couldn't get
sad.
to her. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just, I don't know how these people made it through. I mean, a lot of people died literally during COVID because of this kind of nonsense that they were not prepared for.
Yeah.
But it's just the isolation that you're in. You know, it's just you and your mom. Sometimes you don't get to socialize as much.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard. It's really
Yeah.
hard, and it takes its toll. Went a lot grayer over those years, which is not the end of the world. There's always color in a bottle, but finding time to get to the hairdress, you know what I mean? It's just roller coasters.
Yeah. 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 No, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And you do, I think that's one of the things. It's not that your parent or whoever happens to be isn't a high priority for you.
Right.
But if you don't put yourself first, you can't help them.
The same is true when you have a baby. You see these
That's
mothers
right.
drag themselves to death and they're not taking care of themselves. You know, they're slopping around in their yoga pants and eating the crust of the gnawed over peanut butter and jelly, and they're exhausted all the time. You know, their hair's all raggedy, you know. It doesn't have to be that way. It just, not everything has to be perfect about that baby or that baby's care. You know, babies are pretty resilient. You know, if they're not in the most beautiful clothes, and who cares if they have stains on their clothes, or you know,
They
if they
don't
didn't,
know the difference.
they're fine. You've got to take care of yourself, because then your marriage starts falling apart, your other
Oh,
kids
yeah.
are affected, your relation, you start losing friends because you're so obsessed. And
Yep.
so
Yep.
it's the same thing again in
That's
reverse.
right.
You have to
Yeah.
take care of yourself. And
Yep.
luckily, my doctor, my mom and I had the same doctor, and my doctor recognized it in me. She said, "You are so stressed out. You have got to do something." And that's when I started calling in one of those in-home care companies that once a week somebody would come in. This is before I moved her into assisted living, so I could get out of the house. I just, you know, even if,
Yeah.
because I work at home, even if it was just to go sit in a coffee shop
Yeah.
and not have to deal with this for a couple hours, or run
Yep.
some errands without worrying about my mom.
Yep.
And but I was not very good about self-care. All in all, I was really bad at it, and I regret it, because
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, at our
I've
age, that weight
add me
doesn't
to the
come off.
list.
Yeah, once you gain that weight, it takes like a hammer and chisel to get it
No,
off.
no.
You know,
Once you burn out your brain, it doesn't come back.
that too. We have natural degradation of our brains, and then there's this
That's
part
right.
of it.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. 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 So, okay. Well, on that happy note,
Yes.
I am going to thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's such an important topic.
Well, if your listeners decide that they're interested, I'm happy to come back and talk about caregiver trauma and caregiver burnout and tips for self-care. I don't doubt at all that a lot of your listeners are in the caregiving mode. So you can find me at
Or close to it.
yeah, reversemagazine.us. It's not a .com, it's .us, and information of all the articles and the podcast are there. It's, you know, everything that you need is there. And there's a contact us page, of course, if anybody wants to get.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great, great. Sounds good. And again, thank you for coming on. It's
Thank you.
been so valuable. I wish I had met you about, well, you might not have had all this information when I needed it.
I didn't. I wish I had met me back then.
Bingo. Exactly.
It didn't exist.
Exactly.
Nobody was doing. I'm the only person in South Carolina doing this. The only.
I bet. Well, that
everybody
does
else
not
is
surprise
marketing.
me.
Yeah, everybody's marketing to the senior. They're not marketing to the caregiver, and that's who's making the decisions. You have to market to the caregiver. So,
that's right.
Elizabeth, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yep. And I will say that neither of us are doctors, and none of this is to be seen as medical advice
or legal advice.
Or legal advice. Thank you very much. And I will see everyone next week.